Hi everybody, and welcome back to a new episode. Today we're talking to Samson Tsegai, a senior in the Gilman School of Engineering. He's majoring in computer science with a minor in Russian language studies, and he went to Tallinn, Estonia in the summer of 23 and Dublin, Ireland on an IES Fall 23 abroad program. So let's talk to Samson. Okay, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Samson Tsegai. I am currently a senior in the Gilman School of Engineering, majoring in computer science with a minor in Russian language studies. I call my hometown Washington, D.C., but I also spent half my childhood in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And the trips I took for study abroad were to Tallinn, Estonia in summer 2023 and Dublin, Ireland in fall 2023 as part of the IES Abroad program in Trinity College in Dublin.
No, these are really two great places that people usually don't go to. And because you did two trips in such a short amount of time, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you actually got involved in study abroad and what kind of led you to that process?
Right. So initially, I was pretty ambivalent to it. I knew it was a pretty cool experience that anyone could get their hands on, but I was always afraid of what about my credits or what about the costs and all of that. It was just this one event that I had gone to, hosted by the National Society of Black Engineers. They were hosting a study abroad panel composed of all these students who'd recently returned from study abroad trips, and it was hosted by Ron Palma. And he was able to give a general overview of what the process looks like. And the more I heard my friends go over it, the easier it started to sound and the more excited I started to be. And I thought, wow, I'm in my third year right now. I'm pretty sure if I do the timing right, I can actually pull this off and have one of the most memorable experiences of my life and have a chance to go to Europe, which I had never been to before. So I was really excited about that. From there, it was really just a matter of implementing. I was lucky enough to receive the Burton Scholarship from the university. And on the other hand, I was also one of the recipients of the Gilman Scholarship. So that really helped me with funding. I remember this so clearly. I had to book my flights 5 months in advance, and it was a very peculiar route because there are not a lot of direct flights to Estonia. So it really took me through a lot of countries just to get there. I actually had to do an overnight stay. It was really exhausting. But eventually when I made it there, I was like, wow, I'm really here. I mean, I'm finally here. I'm at my destination. I can't wait to get started.
So what were the countries that you had to go through to get to Estonia, and which one was the one you kind of spent the overnight?
I took off from Newark Airport. And then from there, I got a flight and I reached Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. That was kind of an interesting experience because not a lot of people there spoke English. They were really speaking French to me. Mm-hmm. And I had to kind of just give myself a bit of a crash course on French so I could navigate my way through the airport. You see, the tickets for my flight hadn't published their boarding gates yet. So I was busy not only trying to find my way through the airport, but also trying to find my flight.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man, okay, this middle school French has to kick in now, if anything. Eventually, I finally found the boarding gate. Luckily, I was there like 2 hours early. I got there early, and that was the important part. Also, I was like surprised the comparison and how like the security processes varied. You know, like, and here in America, you have to take off your shoes and all that. And then when I was about to do that at the French airport, they're like, they gave me a look and they're like, nah, you don't have to do that. Just keep your shoes on. I'm like, oh, geez, okay, cool. And what's cool is because that since this is basically the Schengen zone, any other flight I take within Europe, there are basically no security checks because you're coming from one European country to another. Oh. So basically, after they do that passport check there, you don't really have to worry about that anymore. You're really just trying to find your next route. Yeah. And that made things so much easier from there. From France, I went to Oslo, spent an hour there. I somehow came in on the day that they were having their Independence Day. So the whole airport was decked with Norwegian flags.
That's so cute.
Yeah, I know. And then from there, I had to take a flight to Stockholm. But by this time, it was nighttime, and the airport was closing down. And
the airport closes down?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So in Oslo, you see, what I found peculiar about Oslo is how quiet it was. They do not do the megaphone thing. They do not shout airline or numbers or like upcoming flights. None of that. Everyone is extremely quiet. Even your footsteps are heard. I felt all of a sudden very nervous not to make a scene. I was just like trying to be as silent as possible. It was just so different. but it was also so peaceful. I think that was one of the most peaceful moments I've had during my trip. One of the most tranquil, I'd say.
Wow. Being from Newark, New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
There's always something on the megaphone. Someone's lost.
Yeah.
Someone needs to catch a flight. They're calling someone's name. So people just check their gates by themselves and everything?
Yes.
Wow, that's interesting.
So what they have, of course, they have the giant TV displaying all the flights and everything. And, the way I was able to find my flight was, so I just basically went on the airport website and you could just look up your flight there. And that's what I did. And I was able to find my boarding gate there. And that's what I did for every other subsequent flight. And that's something I would recommend to anyone else. Just look it up. You'll probably find it. But also just make sure you're doing it while it's close to the flight's departure in order to ensure that you get a boarding gate. Make sure that you have enough internet, enough Wi-Fi time to do that, because they do limit how much time you have on the Wi-Fi network.
Okay.
Stockholm was interesting. Parts of the airport were under construction. And yes, like I said, they closed down. So all of a sudden, all the crowds of people that were milling about from one part of the airport to the other evaporated. And all of a sudden, you just find a couple people like me who have to do the overnight stay, and a couple guys, who are there at work. It's just very silent. Even all the shops, everything closes down.
Wow.
And so by chance, I also found a couple wayward students like me, and we just kind of just commiserated about
So did you do an overnight stay in the airport?
Pretty much, yeah.
How long was that?
So it was a 12-hour layover.
Oh my god.
Now, here's the thing, right? Where I landed at was Arlanda Airport.
Okay.
Now, Arlanda Airport is about 20 kilometers from the center of Stockholm.
I don't speak kilometers. I'm sorry. How far is that?
I don't even know how many miles. I'm sorry.
Is it very far?
Very far.
Okay,
yes.
got it. That's all I need to know.
But it is very far, yes. And so there's a train there.
Mm-hmm.
There is a shuttle that gets there. I was debating whether it was worth it to get there and back, and then what would I just do at night where everything is closed.
Yeah.
It's not very practical. So I just thought, I'm probably going to have to camp out here. And so the airport kind of opened back up at 5 or something. A lot of people started returning around then.
Okay.
I was like, okay, what do you know? It's almost my time. So everything was pretty energetic again. Boarding gate got signed, and then that was my last stop, right? So it's just an hour to get from Stockholm to my destination, Tallinn in Estonia. There are not a lot of big flights that go there. The jets are smaller, and also you don't really get into one of those overhead kind of passes, that they physically attach onto the planes.
Yes.
Yes, they don't do that. You just walk on the tarmac up the stairs. And it had propellers and everything. I was like, oh my god.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I've never been on one of these. It was an hour-long flight. By the time I landed in Tallinn, first thing I saw was the big sign on top of the airport. And I was like, yeah, this is it. I made it. The plane had to taxi over near the main hall. And so there we left the plane. Yeah, I had officially set my foot on Estonian soil. I was here. I made it.
Yeah.
What our professors did was they gave us kind of a 24-hour kind of, debriefing document. And so what we would do as soon as we touched down. So what I did was, after getting through customs, or really since I was in the EU, it was just kind of these obligatory declarations you have to do, which I had none. Basically, you get through there and you have to hail a taxi. Now, this is where I got to one of the first challenges. So they don't use Uber in Estonia. Actually, this is what I really love about Estonia. They went ahead and made their own Uber. It's called Bolt, and a lot of European countries use it. Yes, and they're the ones who came up with it. Now, what's really cool about Estonia is that compared to its neighbors, or to a lot of other Eastern European countries, they really love interlinking with the digital world. They're the first people to have introduced e-passports.
Really?
Yes, yes. Oh. They also introduced e-voting a lot earlier before.
That's great.
Yeah. They're really all about innovation. And that's really what I found inspirational about heading to Estonia. And so you just really see that they have really great Wi-Fi.
Really?
Yes. You'll find it anywhere. You can be anywhere in the city and you'll have a connection. It's free and
that's awesome, I know. Especially for people who are traveling.
Yes. So first thing I had to do, I had to get my hands on a SIM card. And also this is a big thing I'd say, a very important thing I'd say to any other travelers. Make sure you unlock your phone. If I hadn't unlocked my phone, right? So if you have a certain phone, right, you'd usually have to buy it alongside the telecom network that's going to be tied to, right?
Okay.
And so, the way my phone works is just that it'd be tied to a particular network for a year or so, and then after that, I'd be free to, unlock it and then put in another SIM card in it or something. If I hadn't done that there, you see where I wasn't connected to my own network, I wouldn't be able to keep in contact with anybody while I was in Tallinn unless I had an internet connection. SIM cards were like super cheap. They gave you an assortment of choices, and they're like, if you're staying for a month, we have all these deals for you. You can like select the amount of gigabytes you're going to use in the space of a month, and you can just pay accordingly. And basically, you set all that up, and there you have it. Estonian phone number.
That's awesome, because in other countries it's like kind of annoying really get all this done.
It really is, and there you just get it right out the gate. They have these kiosks. I believe they were called eye centers because they just have this big eye in a blue background, and you can find them in various parts of the city, and they're just meant to help you get your general convenience needs out of the way. And so they have one of those right out the gate in the Tallinn airport, and that's where I got like my first snacks, my first drinks. That's where I tried my first Estonian sodas, and I kind of got like my first SIM card there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your first taste of Estonia really was in that center.
Yeah. I mean, there was more to come, but it was like there that I kind of like tried their version of Sprite, but it wasn't Sprite. Oh my God, just a different flavor. But it was like...
Was it good?
Yes, it was good. So it was like a sparkling soda, right? And it had kind of like a sort of a syrupy taste to it. It's a bit more sugary than sodas here, I noticed.
Which is crazy, because usually in Europe it's the opposite.
Yeah. Oh, and they had a large assortment of those, too.
Yeah.
But this one was particularly sweet. Apparently, the company had been in business since the 1930s.
Wow.
Yeah, so they've had a very large imprint on Estonian culture. They're very proud of their sodas. And
do you remember the name at all?
Kelkule.
Kelkule.
So spelled Kelluke. But yeah, it's like they have their own unique twist on it.
That's so cool.
Yeah. That being said, I'm there. I have an internet connection. Now I have to download all the apps I need. So I had to get a Volt. The program involved us staying with a host family.
Oh.
Yes. We got preliminaries on who we would be staying with a month before the program started.
Okay.
So I was told that I'd be staying with a single mom, I think in the neighborhood of Mustamäe, which is the second largest district of the city that you would find, I believe, in the southeast of the city. You'll find a lot of Soviet era style buildings, and that's where I happen to find myself in. For context, if there's anyone who needs a little bit of brushing up on history, Estonia was part of the Soviet Union, and they make that very, very clear. It also has a very considerable Russian population.
It's right next door.
Yeah, it's right next door. There are some cities near the border where they make up almost 90%. Wow. And in Tallinn alone, about half of the people living there are Russian. But you won't find that kind of like statistics in other cities in Estonia. It was really interesting. Yeah, it's a very special thing about Tallinn, and I think that was one of the reasons our faculty picked Tallinn for our Russian language program there.
Yeah.
So once there, I had to take a Bolt. The Bolt driver, he did not speak a word of English.
Okay.
So
does he speak Russian or?
I had to try that out, and he did.
Oh,
yes.
Fantastic.
So I read his name, right? And I had a fleeting suspicion it was a Russian name. They kind of Estonified their names. So they use a Estonian version of Latin script to kind of write out their names. So like I was seeing a lot of J's in there. I was like, I don't know. But then I just, I mutter a thank you or so when he's helping me with my bags and all that. And he responded in Russian.
In Russian?
Like, yeah, I can actually ask for help and all that stuff if anything happens. So I felt like my language skills were coming to good use. I was really happy to see that I could apply my skills right out the gate. So I'm taking a taxi all the way over to the heart of the city. Along the way, I was also able to meet with a couple of my friends. We actually arrived in the city a day earlier, and so we had to spend a day in a hotel before we could actually start the formal host family program.
Was this on purpose? Like you planned this out before?
So it wasn't me. It was actually the faculty.
Oh, it was part of the program.
Yes,
okay.
So basically, the plan was just like, we're going to arrive a day early because, the logistics of having different people coming from different parts of the country, and everyone's taking their own individual route.
Exactly, yeah.
A couple students came in by ferry from Finland,
Wow.
And so did our professors, actually. So there was a lot of timing with that. They came a bit later in the day. I was one of the early arrivals. What happened was we booked a hotel room. It was right next to the airport. I later found out, but I guess I just took the Bolt. But you could really just walk a couple minutes from the airport all the way to the hotel. That's how close it was. When we get there, they spoke English, luckily. So there you have it. I'm now settled. I'm in Estonia.
Long journey.
Yeah. They had like this complimentary spring water, which actually would be coming up a lot more in my travels there. So that was like the first time I tried Estonian spring water, and it was pretty good. I was there a couple hours, got set up, and then I thought, well, instead of just waiting for everyone, I think this would be a great opportunity. Kind of like do a little bit of looking around, before everyone else arrives. So what's also really cool is that there's this giant mall called Ulamiste.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 2 blocks away, actually, yeah. It was super close, and it's actually the biggest mall in Tallinn. So how convenient. I get to see one of the biggest attractions of the city as soon as I land. So I go there, a lot of familiar faces. You'll see McDonald's, Burger King, all that stuff. I had McDonald's when I got there because I was not ready to try Estonian food just yet. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I'd be walking around and I'd hear a lot of Russian being spoken in the streets, and I'm like, and I can understand what they're saying.
Wow.
And it's
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's nuts. I can't believe it. It's like someone installed this translator machine into my head or something, and I'm now able to comprehend all this stuff.
When you learn a language and then go to the actual country and you can actually use it in day to day is a wild experience.
I know, and yeah, that was so life-changing. It definitely made me more confident about the way I can pick up on languages too. Picking up on a bit of Estonian along the way too really helped me. Yeah. First time I came upon that giant mall complex, I was just struck. It was a nice afternoon. The sun was shining. The weather was great. It's summer in Estonia. It's all the way up in the north, so the days are 10 times longer than they would usually be. The sun did not set until 10:30 p.m. and the sun would rise at, oh my god, I think 5. No, you'd see dawn break at 4 a.m. and then at 5 a.m. You'd see it very well up in the sky.
That's crazy, because I'm just remembering in Rochester when the sun sets at 5 and it rises up. That's so awesome.
And it was all worked out great too, because it just meant more time for me to explore the
Exactly,
city.
You can be out as late as you want.
I know. It was just it was so cool. And transport around the city, that's a whole other story of its own. Essentially, at those kiosks I was talking about, those eye centers, you can pick up this kind of general Tallinn city transport card. And you could just basically get refills for it. You can board any tram, bus, or train that gets you around the city. And it's almost instantaneous.
And it's all one card.
Yes, it's all one card.
That's so awesome, because I hate when I understand, but other countries you have to have different cards for the bus, for the train, for everything.
Yes.
Wow, that's awesome.
It was super convenient, super cheap, and I think that was really what gave me a true sense of independence as soon as I touched down in Estonia. It gave me a sense of mobility I had never encountered in my entire life. I don't drive a car or anything, so I guess for me it was really kind of a groundbreaking moment to be able to just get anywhere super quickly, super easily. They also make every precaution on the bus to tell you with these very calm Estonian voices in these loudspeakers. Yeah, we're about to reach so-and-so place, first in Estonia and then in English.
Oh, so I was about to ask, is it written in English?
They alternate between Estonian and English.
Wow.
Yeah, so
this sounds, American public transportation is not that great, so this sounds amazing.
Yes, it's if there's anyone who loves public transportation, Tallinn is basically the motherlode. The city is designed in such a way that transportation just works really well too. It's very clear that wherever you want to get to, you're going to get there very quickly, very easily, and very cheaply.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So this is your entry level to Estonia, and it sounds incredible. It sounds, you're so perceptive in what you pick up on. It's great. Overall, now that you're looking back on your trip to Estonia, what is kind of the framework for how you remember it? How did you kind of plan your trip out? What was your interest in going to Estonia?
So initially, my professors have been talking about study abroad program for the Russian students for a while now, and they were highly recommending it to me. They said they were finally going to be restarting it after COVID and everything. Yeah. So we'd love to have you on it. And I was like, well, I'd love to be on there. I wasn't sure where to start, and thankfully my professors really helped with that. So as a stepping stone, I could say I'm going to go there to study Russian. And I'm a big history buff, so I made sure to read up on a lot of background history on Estonia before I got there. I love reading about the Cold War, so all that stuff, right? And so I made sure to get the right background before I headed there. So I wanted to know, culturally speaking, what their perception of Estonian history is, how they look back upon their past, and how I could better understand it from their point of view. I wouldn't really be able to truly understand it until I really was there, speaking with the Estonians themselves and how they perceive their own national history. It was really all going to really make sense once I got there. But the best I could do was just try and get the general points down. So just to say, no matter how much prep you put in, you can't possibly learn it all. And that's exactly why you're going to that.
That's why you're going.
Yeah, right. To learn more. I'd say, in general, those were the first things I did in terms of preparation. When I was planning out what to pack, I was very worried that I'd be going to an extremely cold country, right? It's in
the north.
Yeah. But it was summer, so it was really pleasant. Our faculty, they just gave us recommendations to kind of have windbreakers to be prepared for any big coastal winds, because Tallinn is right on the coast, on the northern coast of Estonia. So that did come in very handy. Having like a pair of shoes that are resistant to rain, like kind of having some sort of rain boots, that really helped. And just in general, having slightly warm clothing, but not too much. You'd be
like layers.
Yeah, layers. But you'd be able to wear shorts for most of the day. But it was overall very pleasant weather. So packing was very integral, and then the funding, right? I was also trying to look into ways I could make sure I would be able to get by day to day at a comfortable pace, right? Mm-hmm. Because, of course, there were a lot of costs to factor in, like plane ticket, of course, tuition, and then, food, too.
Yeah.
Right? The arrangement with the host family system was that you would get breakfast and dinner from them.
So lunch is on you.
Lunch is on you. So that also had to be factored in. And so it was around this time that I was like, okay, I have to start looking for funding. And yeah, that's how I came upon not only the Burton Fund that was offered here by the University of Rochester, but also the Gilman Scholarship. Mm-hmm. Coincidentally, since I was going for a language program too, they also had a critical needs like kind of language essay thing too. So I was going all in. I wrote it all out in my application. And luckily I was able to make the cut. And from there, it was just like the planning really all came together. The funding was ready. Packing is done. I know where I'm going to be headed. I've gotten as much background information as I could crammed into my head. And so it's time to just enjoy Estonia and learn the lessons I came there to learn. Yeah. It's really only after the fact to see that. Retrospective. It's such a powerful medium,
Reflection is very important, I feel like, in study abroad.
It is. Yeah, I'd say it was a very confidence building experience that really just required a lot of deep thought part of myself, and I had to make a lot of decisions to get by.
So if you could give one piece of advice or say anything at all to someone who is even thinking or considering study abroad, what would it be?
I would say, first of all, the mindset that you have now, retain it and nurture it, because that decision, if you act on it, is going to be one of the best ones you've ever made in your life. You're going to see a different country full of different people. You're going to be learning so much more about just one section of humanity, that is. And yet it's going to enrich your way of life in ways you would have never thought possible. I would absolutely recommend that, yes, of course, to maintain that mindset, and also take precautions too, Make sure that your planning goes to the letter. Of course, plans, they would never go to plan. It's just really a way to kind of reassure yourself, and also a way to kind of just get a general set of guidelines to make sure you get the most out of your experience. But just make sure that you have a backup somewhere. Just be open. Make sure to be open and be receptive to the different ways and how people get by, their culture, their way of thinking. You're there to absorb as much knowledge as you can, as not only as a student, but as a human being, for your own soul, for your own spirit. You're trying to enrich that as well. So I would say, be open. You never know where it could take you. And I think that's what makes study abroad so special.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, listeners. We'd like to remind you that the opinions expressed by our guests on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Center for Education Abroad or the University of Rochester. Our podcast aims to foster dialogue, critical thinking, and exploration of various topics related to education abroad. We encourage listeners to consider multiple viewpoints, engage in respectful discourse, and form their own opinions. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our community.